Do 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 do. Bum 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 bum. Hey everybody, gather around. Come on in here. I'm sorry I'm late. I know it's a little bit late for coffee with Scott Adams, but will that stop us? It will not. We're better than that. We don't need to drink coffee just early in the morning. We can drink it all day. Let's be free thinkers. Kanye let us do that now. And now, simultaneous sip of whatever you have handy. Good stuff. So, let's talk about a few things. Did anybody notice that Kanye retweeted Newsome's tweet? Now, Hawk, leader of Black Lives Matter, Greater New York chapter, tweeted about this shift that's happening, and I'll paraphrase, but a shift toward love. Not too far from Kanye's philosophical persuasion, and Kanye retweets. He also retweeted Emma Gonzalez, the student, she's probably 18-ish, I don't know how old, anti-gun activist. And so people immediately said to me, did you see this? You said you like Kanye, but now he's tweeting this anti-gun activist. Do you still like him? To which I said, yes, that's why I like him. Not about guns, but the fact that his message is, I can talk to Trump. I can talk to Emma Gonzalez. I can retweet Scott Adams. I can retweet Black Lives Matter, Newsome. Kanye is above this. He's already left the building. He's above, do I like this person's opinion? He's above that, all right? Let's go with him. It's a good place to be. Newsome's going there. I'm going there. Come on, it's a good place to be. Let's lead with love and see what happens. All right. Let's talk about the White House Correspondents' dinner, and everybody's blabbing about Michelle Wolf's comedy routine, and was it funny, and was it too harsh, and was it insulting, was it awkward, and all those things. I think everybody's covered everything they need to say, but because I am a professional humorist, I feel I can't not comment on this, right? It's sort of obligatory. So here's my opinion on the whole thing. Jokes are jokes. Jokes are jokes. We shouldn't allow them to intrude into our other feelings if we can prevent it. Now, the problem here is that there's a relationship between how funny, how naughty you can be, how offensive, how dirty, how awful and evil you can be, and how funny you are. In other words, if you're really, really funny, you can say awful things to people, and people will just say, oh, okay, I get it, that's pretty funny. Let me give you an example. I ran into my stepson, just by coincidence. I just ran into him at my gym. He's an adult. And he was telling me that his friend and him were talking about, he saw some comments about me. And there was somebody on Twitter, I think, who described me as looking like a toilet brush with a mouth. Now, it's an insult, right? It's talking about my appearance. It's about as terrible an insult as you can make. But it's also funny. It's also funny, right? And it's funny enough that even I laughed at it. It's like, toilet brush with a mouth, that's pretty good. Yeah. I don't like that it's about me necessarily, but it's pretty good. So both my stepson and I laughed about it just because it was clever enough that it sort of went into a new category where it became art instead of just being mean. Michelle Wolf when she's doing comedy in front of a mixed group, meaning, the people watching it, at least on TV, is, some conservatives, some liberals, some men, some women, there's no way that her humor could be as funny to every person there. Some people reportedly thought the whole thing was hilarious. I'm not going to doubt that, because humor is subjective. I can tell you that most conservatives, and my own opinion on it was, some of it was clever. It didn't quite hit, my personal laugh reflex, but it was clever. It was humor. Was it also mean? Well, here's the thing. Had it been funnier, I'm not sure we'd care. In other words, if everybody had thought it was funnier, we would have just laughed and said, it's a joke. Everybody makes fun of everybody, The president has made fun of people. People make fun of people. Just let it go. But there was something about the way she did it, and something about the proximity, because, if your target is sitting right there, 5 feet from you, it just feels like you're being mean instead of funny. So the physical distance had something to do with how we felt about it. I would say it was a totally unimportant night. We shouldn't draw any conclusions about it. A comedian intentionally was outrageous for the reasons that artists become outrageous. I can't hate that. I can say that maybe she didn't execute as well as maybe even she wanted to. I don't know. I don't want to read her mind. But I'm sure it could have been a little bit better. But no big deal. I think that it reminded me a lot of the time that President Trump was sitting, stoically in the audience at that same event, and he was the butt of just vicious jokes about him, and he didn't laugh, he just sat there. I felt a little bit the same watching Sara Huckabee Sanders sit there and take it. And what I mean by that is, I came away from it with an even more positive feeling about her than I already had, which was very positive. Keep in mind that whether you're a liberal or a conservative or anything in between, there's one thing we'd all agree on. Sara Huckabee Sanders has the hardest job in the whole frickin' world. Now, I know you're going to say being Secretary of State sounds pretty hard, A lot of jobs that sound pretty hard. But being President Trump's spokesperson and a woman, which does make it harder. Let's be honest about that. It does make it harder because of the topics that he talks about or has been blamed for that make it a little extra topic. So not only is she doing the hardest job in the world, but really well. I think even her critics would say she does, a great job at the hardest job in the world. So how did she come out of this whole thing? Classy, better. That's it. No real damage. The way she handled it was just classy, like everything else she does. So I'll just let that go. I heard just a moment ago that Iran is looking to get out of the nuclear deal, and nobody is quite sure what's going on there, So that's the news of the day, big question mark. We'll find out what happens about that. What about the Conway jokes? Yeah, the jokes about Kellyanne Conway are vicious and not sufficiently funny. They're not as funny as my toilet brush with a mouth insult that somebody used against me. But it's the same standard. If it's funny enough, I give it a pass. If it's not, it just looks mean. Yeah, so there's a big announcement by Netanyahu, 1 p.m. So that would be my time in 50 minutes, 49 minutes. So there should be some big news on Iran, maybe, in 49 minutes. I'm going to make a prediction without knowing anything. Are you ready for this? A prediction about Iran without knowing anything. Right? So presumably I'll be wrong because I don't know anything. Here's the prediction. Whatever Iran does is going to look like it's making things worse. But it won't. Meaning that our first impression will be, oh, darn, this doesn't look good. And you wait a few weeks, and you're going to see that it opened an opportunity. I don't know what the opportunity is. I don't know what Iran necessarily is complaining about. That's my primary generic prediction, is it's going to look like trouble today, maybe, but it might look like an opportunity because chaos does that. So if you notice, one of the best statements I saw about President Trump's negotiating strategy is that when things are sort of stuck, that he's willing to turn over the card table, just throw the table and say, okay, we're stuck. Let's blow up everything and see what we can do. All right? This is probably one of those situations where blowing it up, the demolition phase, might be the most productive thing that could happen. And I don't know that it matters if Iran blows it up or Israel blows it up or we blow it up, but probably the status quo just needs to be, put in question. And I think that we have the president, the team, the leadership, we're in the right place in the world, the right timing, the zeitgeist. A lot of things seem to be lining up to make people a little more creative and maybe get past some mental blocks that we had before. So I'm looking for short-term bad news that we will eventually start to realize, hey, that bad news opened up some opportunities that maybe we didn't have before. So watch for that. In very much the same way that the fire and fury comments look like bad news short-term, but then they opened up an opportunity, that and other things. All right. How to be pro-Trump in the tech industry without risking your career. Easy. Don't do it. Just pretend you don't have an opinion. You're installing a bush in your garage? What? All right. Can I help Jim Acosta? Oh, the caravan. So the caravan story is another one of these fog of war situations where, do you really know what's going on there? Like, who exactly is organizing the caravan? Who's in it? What do they really want? How much is real? How much is fake? How much danger are they in? Why doesn't Mexico take them? It's just a whole bunch of gray area, weird, vague. I don't know quite what to make of it. But the big picture seems to be that this is designed as a challenge to Trump, that I believe he'll be up to the challenge. Now, one of the things that might happen, just speculating here, and so just speaking out loud and thinking it through, imagine if the caravan succeeds in what I believe is their goal, which is to have lots of people essentially surrender and then be processed as whatever the word is what's the word they want to get designated something so they can stay in the country, essentially saying that they're in danger if they go back. Asylum, thank you. So they want to get into the asylum pipeline system to see how they can do in that. But here's the thing. Putting that many people this publicly into the system will probably make the system look like a system that doesn't work or is a risk. So my guess is that the asylum seekers, because they're doing this so publicly and in numbers, they might have the wrong result from what they're hoping for. In other words, it might make Americans say, wait a minute, we have a system like that can be so easily exploited, let's change that law. So the asylum system is likely to either tighten up or go away because of this big public display. So I'm not sure that helps anybody. So we'll see how this plays out. So somebody said here, do some research or shut the hell up, because as I admitted, I'm talking without the benefit of knowledge. If you've read my book, Win Bigly, which it seems you haven't, you would know that I don't believe any of us really understand any of the big questions. So talking without the benefit of knowing all the details is just sort of the way it's done. It's the way everybody's doing it. I wish I could do it with full knowledge, but how would I get it? Somebody says the golden age is not happening because the left won't let it. Incorrect. They will try, but the golden age is already upon us. The key is North Korea. When North Korea comes in, it's going to be this big, enormous, mental rubber band that somebody snapped in their heads, and suddenly we'll realize that just maybe a lot of the things that we thought were impossible were only impossible because of the way we thought about it. And that if we thought about it differently and acted a little bit differently, maybe all things are possible. Not all things, but I think we could make great strides in the golden age. In unrelated news, I just tweeted the moment I came on here right before, a link to a blog post I just put up in which I am doing a little fact-checking on my critics. As you know, when Kanye retweeted my periscopes, I became the focus of negative attention because people don't like the idea that I could be, any part of something productive, I guess, if I'm associated with Trump in any way. And they dug out every rumor and false fact about me, and they printed them. And so I thought I would address them, just in case anybody, wants it. Now, the reason I wrote it is, I'm not sure it's an interesting blog post to read, maybe for some people, but I didn't write it for that reason. I wrote it for the purpose of being able to refer to it. So if you run into any people who are saying, yeah, but that Scott Adams guy who believes this or that, you can refer him to the blog and fact check him. So that's what I'm using it for. I'm using it for my own future fact checking. Let's talk about Joy Reid. What? I think my only comment about Joy Reid is, what's happening? I don't know what's happening here. Do you? Does anybody know what's happening? Now, some people are saying, well, she just said some homophobic things and now she's saying that she has no memory of writing it. Maybe somebody else wrote it or hacked it. Interestingly, I saw Rachel Maddow come out with a full, unambiguous endorsement of Joy Reid, which was interesting. It's hard for me to imagine Rachel Maddow fully endorsing someone who had ever said, even allegedly, those things. So that was interesting. Now, it could be that Rachel Maddow doesn't believe the accusations. Could be she didn't think any of them were, rose to the level of being important. The few things I saw looked like they might have been a little overblown in terms of their importance, but they were offensive nonetheless. I'm having a hard time caring about that topic, except that it's more evidence that literally everybody in the public can be taken down. I don't think anybody's safe. I get taken down. Kanye, Kanye's too big to be taken down. But Joy Reid, take it down. Will Newsome be part of the era of dragon energy? Well, I'll tell you, there are three black, I'd say, thought leaders, and more. They're more than that, but they're at least that. Thought leaders have emerged. You've seen Candice Owens, Kanye West, and Newsome. I think those are really three of the most productive voices you're ever going to find. And Thomas Sowell, except, I think Thomas Sowell has been around long enough that he doesn't have the current energy that the other three names I mentioned have, which is Larry Elder as well. Yeah, there are plenty of people who have been on the same side as the three people I mentioned in one way or another, but they haven't had the impact. So the three I mentioned are big impact thinkers who have changed things more so than even the, let's say, more academic, long time people who have been saying similar things. They just haven't had quite the impact as the three I mentioned. All right, anything else happening? I think I'm going to get ready to figure out what's going on with Iran and with Israel. My commitment to you is that if North Korea continues to go on the right path, and I hope it will, that there might be something interesting happening in the Middle East. Something positive and something enduring for the first time. Now, I know people say, as they've said in North Korea, the last time we thought we had a deal, they said they would denuclearize, and then they changed their mind, so history repeats. To which I say, when was the last time President Trump was president? Like, this is not history repeating. There has never been a President Trump. We haven't been in this situation. We've been in a situation that reminds you of this, and should, because it has elements in common. But we've never been in this situation. This situation, or let me say it as plainly as possible. Take any normal situation and then compare it to that situation, except you've added President Trump to the mix. Is it the same situation now? Not really. It's a new situation because he changes the reality when he enters the picture. Do you think we'd be better friends with the East than with Europe? Well, let me tell you what one of the things that President Trump has gotten right consistently about Europe. Have you noticed that, President Trump is sort of the insulter in chief? He's insulted and, just about everybody. But when he's been dealing with Asia, especially our allies, and then even when North Korea started becoming, flexible, the one word that would describe how respect. The way he has treated the East is with respect. He's used respect as almost like a physical tool. It's so tangible, it's so palpable that that's what he's doing. Showing ultimate respect to President Xi was absolutely necessary to get us where we are. Likewise, South Korea, likewise, Japan, etc. And he hasn't missed a step on that. His consistent application of respect in that area is on target and works perfectly. Now, does he need to show the same style, and I'll use that word style, of respect for Russia, Great Britain, Germany, other countries? No, because the culture is different, right? Is there anybody in Great Britain who can't take a joke? Well, there's probably people who can't take a joke everywhere, but let's face it, the United States could make terribly disrespectful jokes about Great Britain all day long. They would make some jokes about us. We'd all laugh. We'd have a beer. All right. Just doesn't mean the same thing, in some cultures as it does in others. So I think President Trump is clearly making a distinction, where the respect has a function and it's important, and he sticks to it, very diligently. And where it doesn't matter that much is more of a free range situation. It's the law of the jungle. It's, let's show dominance and power. If it's a free range situation with people who are not hung up on the absoluteness of respect, he uses a different approach. And so far that's worked. South Korea's president says Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, I don't know how you can argue it if we get to a good result. Still too early to say we'll get there. I hate to get ahead of myself, but you just have to talk about a Nobel Prize. I mean, what would be a bigger accomplishment than denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula? Come on. Forget about just war with North Korea as a risk, but their proliferation of nuclear stuff. I mean, my God, it's like the biggest thing. Is it the biggest thing in my lifetime? It might be. The Iron Curtain coming down was a big deal, but we weren't fighting with them at the time. We weren't really at war with each other by that time. Was there a tweet from the president about meeting at the DMZ? Did somebody say that? Let me check that. Sometimes you guys say stuff on the comments here that numerous all right, so here's the newest tweet, 4 hours old. Numerous countries are being considered for the meeting, but would Peace House, Freedom House on the border of North and South Korea be a more representative, important, and lasting site than a third-party country? Just asking. Oh my God. That's the greatest. So let me tell you why I like that so much. Do you remember what I've been saying about the meeting place? What I've been saying about the meeting place is that it's not just, wherever is the most practical, place in the middle sort of place you can meet, that you should pick the meeting place based on the symbolism, based on the message that the meeting place sends. The president is suggesting, the DMZ and the Peace House because it would be historic and, it would be a visual, it would be, it would send, a message, etc. Now, the downside of that is that it is also famous for being a war zone, and it's probably not as visual as, say, a Switzerland. So I had been pushing Switzerland as an option because if you get in your head North Korea, Switzerland, North Korea, Switzerland, the more you pair those two ideas, the more likely you're going to get a result that makes North Korea a little more like Switzerland. So persuasion-wise, the place you do it is going to change the result. It just does. The president is the first person who is not me to point that out. Fact check me on this. Has anybody else that you've seen discussed the meeting place in terms of its the message that the meeting place itself sends? Have you heard anyone else discuss that but the president and me? Right? So, yeah, I don't think so. But the president's spot on that the negotiation isn't just the negotiation. It is also the location. That's a variable. Somebody said Switzerland is thinking like a Westerner. I think that's a fair criticism, except that Kim Jong-un went to school in Switzerland. So if it were a random neutral country that's closer to the West, I think your criticism would be spot on. But because he already has a connection to it, that makes sense. Wow. Okay, I'm going to get off of this and and then we might talk again later. Talk to you later.